Well, the question is this the budget that will pull Nigeria and Nigerians out of the dark tunnel, like you heard the president say there? Well, for an in-depth analysis of President Tinubu's 2026 budget, Dr. Paul Alaje is a chief economist, SPM Professionals. He joins me now on Newsnight. Thank you so much. Good to have you on Newsnight. Well, you heard the president there. He seems to be very optimistic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Everybody seems to be optimistic as far as the legislature is concerned, where the president laid out the 2026 budget. From your view, I mean, what you've seen so far or read or heard, number one, will this budget put an end to the cycle of running multiple budgets concurrently? We heard the president there say, look, there's going to be discipline, in budget implementation in 2026.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me. I want to believe that it requires high level of discipline from the executive for us to end cycle of running 2025 budget, 2023 budget, 2025, 2024, 2025, or 2024 and 2026, or 2025 and 2026. The president have said it, and he had made it clear that going forward, there will be an end to that. And I think I would appreciate it if the president fulfilled that promise of ending it so that it brings confidence. If you recall the recent document shared by the executive to some agency and parastatal, only 30% or so 2025 capital expenditure, which perhaps is the most significant portion of a budget because the investment in the economy, and 70% is to be carried over to the 2026 budget. So if we truly must earn the rollover of budget cycle, whose life ordinarily should be a 12 calendar month or one fiscal year, then the president truly by example. Now he has promised, and I think that by this time next year, 2026, we can review whether that is done. It's very important for us not to keep rolling over our budget because that has implication on inflation, it has implication on confidence, it has implication of outcome of the implementation of a year's budget. To that extent, I think that it would be good if the president really fulfilled this promise, as many of us who watch the economy are largely expecting a level of improvement becoming a tradition in Nigerian economy and polity.
We must apologize for the break there. We'll try to manage this conversation within the time that we can. Paul Alaje, let me ask you, I mean, if you place this, the assumptions on this budget and economic reforms of this administration, does it give you a reason to be optimistic that truly in 2026 budget will provide, the hope that we're looking for, consolidation, renewed resilience, and most importantly, shared prosperity?
Yeah, President has named his budget and he has mentioned areas that should excite us. Let me quickly mention a few of them that are exciting because this budget for me came with mixed feelings. Some parts are really very exciting, some parts are not as exciting as he demonstrated. One is the issue of more spending on defense, and I'm happy that the president read the riot act on those who are fomenting trouble and wants to set our nation apart across all religions, across all regions. The president was very clear as to why he's voting more to security. Again, we've seen some more voting to health, and now education and health were relatively prioritized in his budget. I must say that those are things that are commendable. However, when the president said this is what will take us out of the dark, we need to ask to where. First is when you look at the total expenditure of over 58 trillion, this total expenditure, how many of them will go into capital? It's still less than 50%. For a nation of our size, we need to get to a point where 50% of any money spent, that's 50 kobo of every 1 naira, go into capital expenditure. If we don't do that, I'm afraid we might not get to a point where we'd say that we are promoting development. And I know that the funds are in there. I know that the funds are relatively scarce, but I can tell you that to get to that point, we need to spend more. Two is the issue of debt. government is hoping around debt service will be nearly 50% of total revenue. If you go by what we have seen from the same budget presentation, where we met only 60% of revenue of 2025, other things being equal, if we project that for 2026, what we are saying is that with the expected debt service rate, we might have that increase from over 50% to nearly 85%. That's not what we want to see. So until the budget is implemented, we might not see. But that will not come in so much excitement if that be the case. And another one is the issue of debt. How much are we hoping to spend in debt to cover the entire budget? Honestly, I must say, while this budget has some exciting part, there are some other parts that honestly the president has got a tough work ahead of him. And honestly, I can only wish him well, that the future, I hope, is really bright. Recall that I spoke with your colleague when 2025 budget was passed, and it was a lot of excitement similar to this. But I tell that budget was overly ambitious. I'm not surprised that we didn't meet quite a number of expectations of that budget. But I must give kudos to the government. We're able to stabilize the naira, even though what government projected, we did slightly above it. And for 2026 budget, expectation is 1,400 for exchange rate. Do I think we can meet up? Yes, if we partner with Dangote Refinery to keep producing local consumption, produce for our local consumption in PMS and in diesel. If we change, honestly, and we don't have any other local consumption, we will see our exchange rate spike. Most importantly, this budget election year. Pre-election year is very sensitive and susceptible to high inflation, and secondly, devaluation in exchange rate. The president must work with all other politicians to ensure that proliferation of naira, of dollars, is not what we witness in our economy. Only those that need it should hold hard currency, especially for industrial import purpose or travel purpose. For political purposes, we must do everything to stop that. If we don't, I can assure you that exchange rate gains that we have made with the effort of government, central bank, and most importantly, locally produced fuel. If all of these are not done, next year, as much as we have high expectation, might not be as we have it. But we can only wait with some gains that we have made in recent time, that we capitalize on them to have a wonderful year ahead of us in 2026.
All right, that's an optimistic note. And you talk about capital expenditure. CapEx based on this budget is around 26 trillion naira. And that's a whole lot more than recurrent expenditure, away from the pattern that we've had, years back. Aren't you impressed with that? 26 trillion out of 58, goes to CapEx. And of course, there's the concern about deficit, 23 trillion naira deficit. How do we close that gap?
So here is it. When you look at the deficit, it's huge, and our capex almost swallowed all our deficits. That's the worry I was laying emphasis to. That means if we don't borrow, it might be difficult for us to invest anything on capital expenditure. All our revenue, which we are not sure we will meet 100%, we go into recurrent expenditure. Now, money must be spent, salary must be paid, government must run. And these are very important to do. And that is why I feel we need to find alternative means of generating revenue, or more means of generating revenue. And I can say that first presented is MTEF, which of course is prerequisite for this budget to be presented. But the tradition over the years, at least in the last 10 years that we've noticed, or 12 years that we've noticed, even though government present MTEF, subsequent year they hardly refer to the previous MTEF. What they do is they narrow the perspective into just the previous budget, rather than looking holistically into the previous MTEF. And I think as a matter of policy, National Assembly must start considering MTEF capturing the real expectation of government for 3 years, not just as a requirement for mere producing budget. So we've seen capital expenditure. The question is, would we spend all of this moment today? Recall that government had mentioned that 70% of capital expenditure will be transferred to 2026 budget, and that's what you've seen right there. So of what proportion of the entire spendings will this give us? Improvement, we should not be doing less than 50-60% in the coming period, because technically we're looking at 70% of 2025 and what exactly we should do in 2026 based on the circular that was previously issued by government. By all means, If we must spend any 1 naira, 50 kobo of the same must go to capital expenditure. And I mean real core capital, not administrative capital. Real capital. That's how Nigeria can embrace development that we all yearn for. If anything unites us, or we have the same desire, our desire as a people is that we become developed, is that we have infrastructure that is sustainable and sustained by authorities and indeed by citizens of Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje, Chief Economist at SPM Professionals. We hope that truly 2026 budget will be one of shared prosperity and more. Thank you for joining us on Newsday.